A big thank you comes to you today from Dead Rabbit via Patreon for his long support of the channel. Agatha versus the Mimeoplasm. And we've got some mana to start things off with. Maybe buy ourselves a bit of time getting down the Hero's Blade before our commander. We will try this. It's a little bit clunky, but we're on the draw at least. Alright, awesome. And immediately punished. Our opponent goes Sol Ring straight into a Metallic Mimic, naming Ooze on that, so as likely gone for Ooze Tribal. We draw into more buffs for our commander in Blackblade Reforged, and we do have a payoff in the Leafkin Avenger as well, so if all goes well we might be able to get some stuff done here. Why don't we slow our opponent down with this Nature's Claim and blow up the Sol Ring. That will gain our opponent some life, but obviously it will greatly reduce the mana that they have available as well. So the Sultai player just following up with a tap land, and then we get into a mana crypt of our own. So yeah, I think we can go for the Hero's Blade. If it wasn't for the tap land there, or the Gaia's Cradle not tapping for any mana, we could have gone for Leafkin Avenger, and that would have allowed us to tap that for mana next turn, but yeah, not to worry. I think we're going to be going faster than our opponent as it happens now. Seeing the first Ooze from our opponent, and Aurum Reef Ooze. And then the Metallic Mimic swings in, so our opponent going to start seeing some plus counters on his stuff soon. Alright, and speaking of tap lands, there is a Cinderglade now, so not doing too well on the mana front unfortunately, but we will get down our commander here. Or are we best to just go for the Leafkin Avenger actually? Yeah, we'll go for Leafkin Avenger. Might be able to make use of the mana on that, and we're obviously just trying to set up here. Making our commander's power 7 will make it so that this will deal a chunk of damage per red mana that we put into it. Fertile Ground going on to the tap land now. Our opponent has access to 2 mana, 3 cards in hand, and will swing in with just the 4/4. So that bumps itself up to a 5/5, putting a plus counter on itself. And we will take the damage, just hoping to outrace our opponent at this point. Alright, that is a Hammer of Nazan as well, so unlike previous games with this commander, we're actually getting into the buffs now. So drop our commander straight away. The Hero's Blade is going to jump onto that straight away, so it immediately becomes a 4-powered creature, meaning the Leafkin Avenger can now tap for mana. So let's drop the Gaia's Cradle. That will tap for 2, and we'll give our commander Indestructible with the Hammer of Nazan, and that also gives a +2 buff to power as well. So not only do we have a decent blocker now, but it will be difficult to remove our commander. So that is now a 6/3. Once we get the Blackblade Reforged into play, it will equip for free, and our commander will definitely have enough power in order to make this relevant. So yeah, why don't we go for this now. Hammer of Nazan automatically equips that, like I said, so +1/+1 for each land we control, and that bumps our commander up to a 10/7. So now if we click that and choose a player, we see that it's only red mana to activate that. We'll not show our opponent what we're doing yet, just in case he doesn't know. But I think it's pretty obvious at this point what our aim is. The only thing holding us back on going crazy is not having too much red mana available, but we'll do it at the end of our opponent's turn. That will be 4 damage. Oh, and now an Imprisoned in the Moon. Excellent. So we're going to need Pro Blue or a means of removing this in order to keep our commander relevant at this point. I mean, it's still going to have all the keywords, but it will not reduce the cost of activated abilities. So we'll deal the 4 damage now. Knocked our opponent down to 40. Oh, and of course it turns it into a land, doesn't it? I thought it just removed the abilities on this thing. So yeah, it turns it into a land, obviously knocks off all the equipment. Now swinging in with a 5/5 and a 2/1. And the Ooze will buff itself up to a 6-powered creature again. Well, if we don't get to use Agatha again, then we at least understand what we could have done during this game if it wasn't for the removal spell. I think we're best just going after the equips here. That is a Mana Confluence. We'll further buff the Leafkin with the Blackblade Reforged, but maybe Indestructible would be the best thing to go for first. Unfortunately, it's going to be 7 mana to equip this to the Leafkin Druid, which I don't think we have. So just go for the Hero's Blade instead. And like I said before, that means that we have a decent blocker now. Now this does deal damage equal to its power, so it could be that just dumping 8 mana into this after an attack and dealing a total of 18 damage could be worthwhile. An Overgrowth going on to the Hinterland Harbour. And following that up with a legendary enchantment, Herdana's Climb. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, a plus counter on a creature you control. And you can transform this to give some further buffs. Yeah, so plus counter onto the Metallic Mimic means that this can add continual counters. They will have to swing into an indestructible though, which they obviously don't want to do. And this did get flipped round straight away into the land thanks to all the plus counters on this thing already. So that is worth noting. Alright, and into Xenagos. So, is it worth going Xenagos, buffing this thing up, and then we can just start piling mana into its ability, even though the cost isn't reduced? I think that should be alright. So Xenagos into play. At the beginning of combat, it will give a doubling of the power and toughness of a creature and give it haste. We cannot afford to do anything else here apart from show our hand in Ronus's Monument, but yeah, I don't think we're going to make much use of that. I'd rather leave my opponent second guessing. So next turn we'll be able to deal at least 18 damage to our opponent. Games become a bit clunky, but hopefully our opponent won't be able to do anything in time. Now they could swing in with this, and then during the attacking phase give it the buff with the Temple of Orazca, and maybe outrace us with that. Doesn't look like they're holding up the mana for that though. A Corpsejack Menace comes into play. I think their best bet would have been trying to race us with this. Alright, they did still have the mana. I forget that this taps for 2, so yep, they are doing what they should be doing here. Could have done that during the attacks. They would have got an extra plus counter, so that would have been an extra 2 points of damage on us there. But yeah, they're going to take us down by half our life total here, bumping up to 16. And that is a flyer now, so nothing we can do about that. Our opponent's likely to outdo us here, bumping us down to 7. And it looks like taking care of our commander definitely got us. You can imagine if Xenagos had gone on to the Leafkin Avenger and bumped it up to 18, and then we just put red into its ability a bunch of times, then yeah, it's pretty certain that we would have had our opponent there. Go down to 4 on the Mana Crypt. And there's just a Reflecting Pool, unfortunately, so no means of us unlocking our commander. And our opponent's likely to just chump block here. I mean, all we can ultimately do is hope that he takes the damage from the Leafkin Avenger in the red zone, but he'll just chump block, and I don't think we've got him even if he does take the damage here. Having to put too much mana into its ability, unfortunately. So, yep, throwing the Metallic Mimic in the way. And we will, just to go out with a whimper, we will tap into our opponent's, or onto our opponent's face, tap into this ability. It will cost us the full 8 mana, when we're hoping it'll only cost the 1. So that's 18 damage directly onto our opponent's face, and we will take the attack from our opponent as long as he doesn't play with his food too much. Using the Orazca on the Aurum Refuse, and then turning in sideways at us straight away for a total of 22 damage. Oh, and there will be an additional 2 points thanks to the plus counters. So down we go to minus 20. Yeah, another turn or two there, and we might have actually been able to cobble something together if we were drawing into anything relevant. The client won't show us. Yeah, losing out on our commander really got us there, so we'll try again. Playing against partners Sam and Frodo this time with a decent chunk of mana. Sylvanus's Invoker is a means of us making infinite mana with maybe the Nykthos, but most likely the Castle Garenbriggs. So yeah, we're on the draw again. We will keep. We draw into more mana in an Incubation Druid, so yeah, nothing to do on turn 1. Just get down the castle tapped. First spell from our opponent is a Prize Pig. So a mana dork for our opponent that will care about food. And there is another enabler for us, Flame Wave Invoker. So let's focus on the ramp first of all. Yeah, if we go for Ancient Tomb, we can get down an untapped land with the Nature's Law. And that will allow us into a dork. The Incubation Druid will definitely tap for mana. I'm not confident I'll be able to get a counter on the Gaia Sage straight away, so we'll go for the Druid. Sam Loyal Attendant into play this time. And our opponent does still have a mana held up from the pig, creating the first food token from the Sam and passing the turn through to us most likely. Alright, that is a Gruul Turf, so more infinite mana with the Sylvanus' Invoker. We just need to find a means of getting our commander's power up there, which it doesn't look like we're going to be doing anytime soon, annoyingly. So we'll just get down the Nykthos. Do we focus on just adapting this so that it taps for more mana. I think that's alright. And then with that we can play out this Gaia Sage, and it can start evolving when we get these creatures in so that it actually taps for mana. So yeah, we've got enablers, we've got mana, we've got potential combos online, we just don't have a means of buffing our commander, unlike in the previous game. Yeah, I had high hopes for Agatha, but it seems as though you just need too many different pieces to actually do anything. It's an interesting commander, but it's nowhere near as efficient as you would like a commander like her to be. The second commander into play this time, Frodo Adventurous Hobbit. Thankfully our opponent has black mana from the prize pig. Seems as though we might be up against the precon here. Alright, they've cracked the food token, so the prize pig did get untapped there and allows our opponent into another member of the Fellowship, Pippin. So we may well see Merry soon. And there it is, our opponent's fetched it out of the library. Sam making another food token at the beginning of combat. And now swinging in the 2/4 Sam towards our 1/2 Gaia Sage. We will certainly not block. Alright, just another land for us unfortunately, so let's get the Gruul Turf out of the way. We can tap the Tiger for a red mana, and then bounce the Tiger. And I suppose we should just get our commander into play here. And then we're just praying that we can actually buff its power somehow. Argument to be made for holding this back as a blocker, but I think just for the sake of being efficient with mana, we'll get down the Sylvanas' Invoker. Maybe if I'd bounced the Nykthos instead of the Tiger, we could have tapped down the Ancient Tomb, left this untapped for blocking, but not too worried about my opponent swinging in at us. The Gaia Sage will now evolve, turning into a 2/3. So like I've mentioned before, if we can reduce the cost of the ability on this with our commander, then what we can do is make infinite mana. So we would tap this down for 2 mana, then untap it for only 1, and it would become a creature then, so we could tap it down for 2 again, and constantly just tap and untap this, gaining a mana every time. We can do the same with Nykthos if we have enough devotion, Gaia's Cradle if we have enough creatures, and at Castle Garenbrig we can make specific green mana for creatures and abilities. So it's all in place here, it's just believing in the heart of the cards at this point. Thankfully our opponent's not doing too well on mana. A Lobelia, Defender of Bag End, and our opponent's cracked the food, so the prize pig is going to be untapped again. And then Sam makes another food for us. And now seeing a swinging in of... what's going to swing in with Sam? Just going in with the Frodo, apparently. And they have gained 3 or more life this turn, so the ring tempts them. And we can only block with the Agatha, but it's up against a 1/3, so we allow it through. Alright, and in for a Sylvan Library if we were... yeah, if we were going to make any draws there, Sylvan Library is probably one of the better ones. So throw down the Sylvan Library straight away. And I think I will go for the Flame Wave Invoker as well, because if we can make infinite red mana with the Invoker at some point soon, then hopefully that means that we'll be able to get our opponent. It all depends on what we get off the top with the Sylvan Library, of course. But let's go Flame Wave Invoker and continue to keep our fingers crossed. The ability will cost 1 less at least, thanks to Agatha actually having some power. So that will be 7 mana in total, which I don't think we can afford. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 into Devotion, 5, 6, 7. And we do have a shuffle effect for the Sylvan Library as well, so if we see absolutely nothing we want on top, we don't have to take the life and we can shuffle it away and look at fresh cards. Always good to hold on to your shuffle effects if you can. A Knight's Whisper from our opponent, still hunting for that black mana. The pig has done a hell of a lot of work for him this game, fixing that black mana he needs. Managing to make a land. It is not black mana, but it is a Ghost Quarter that can deal with some of our problem lands. I'm not sure our opponent's familiar with the combos, they're not all that well played. Tapping down the Ghost Quarter anyway, in order to crack a food, which untaps the prize pig. And our opponent gaining this incremental life could be relevant, even though we're dealing 5 damage a pot with this. But if we're looking to go infinite, hopefully not. A Rapacious Guest. Alright, so Frodo is the ring bearer, as you would expect, and it is going to swing in here. Again, our opponent has gained some life from the food token. So again, we can only block with the Agatha. We will allow our opponent to hit us for a 3rd piece of commander damage. And upon hitting us during the damage phase, Rapacious Guest is going to trigger. And they will get another food token. And Pippin at the end of the turn going to tap down and make a 4th token here. So, yeah, could go for an overrun effect with this next turn. We need to be careful. Let's tap 4 green mana into this Nykthos, and then it can be red mana from the Incubation Druid. And we'll point at our opponent. So we've got 1 red mana floating, but we do get to deal 5 damage to our opponent. We're in the opposite predicament than what we were in previously. Alright, so pray for something decent off the top here. Another fetch land isn't a good start. Alright, a Court of Garenbrig, a Captivating Crew isn't particularly useful without a sack outlet. We can only do that at sorcery speed. So let's put that back on top, put the fetch back on top as well so that we don't have to take life. And then we'll certainly shuffle those things away. And that can take us into a Cinderglade for some more red mana. Let's just go after the Court of Garenbrig here. So as long as we can hold on to the Monarchy, I'm not sure our opponent isn't going to take the Monarchy from us next turn. Might just go for the Pippin activation and try and deal a bunch of damage to us. But we'll hopefully start getting plus counters on the Agatha at least, slowly but surely. We will draw a card to the Monarchy, and we don't know what we have on top at the moment. We actually have, this is going to cost 7 to activate. We've got Devotion of 7 on green with Nykthos at the moment. Unfortunately, green mana doesn't really help us with the Flamewave Invoker, so yeah, while we've got infinite mana, we don't, or close to infinite mana, we don't have anything to do with it. So let's see what card we draw. If it's just a land, then I think it's going to be pretty soon time to give up. 3 visits is near as damn it. All relies on what our opponent wants to do here. Playing out a tap land that gains a life, putting a counter on the prize pig. Finally seen Merry, Warden of Isengard. And a Prosperous Innkeeper is a halfling citizen, so yeah, I'm going to make a treasure token with that and start gaining even more life. And then sacrificing a food in response to the trigger there, gaining 3 life and a plus counter on the Rapacious Guest. They'll still make a food token with the Sam, untapping the prize pig, and that will still have them on 4 food tokens for the Pippin. Just have to hope that he's got too many abilities to keep track of here. Making a treasure token means that Merry will make a soldier token, which will gain a life, and that puts a counter on the prize pig again. So you can really start to see the synergy of the halfling deck here. Alright, so another counter from the, or another token from the Sam. How much is our opponent going to dedicate to the board? Just going in with Frodo again is fine with me. Alright, yeah, just going for a Temptation of the Rings, so going to loot now that it is level 2, it's about to become level 3. Discarding to that Bilbo, Birthday Celebrant. Never made a deck out of this thing. Our opponent is unfortunately going to take the Monarchy away from us here, but once again the only creature we could have blocked with is Agatha, and we can either block and keep the Monarchy, or we can not block and keep our commander and still get at least 1 plus counter from the enchantment here. We've got the Sylvan Library, so once again we're just hoping that we can actually get into something relevant eventually. This thing is now a 3-3. Alright, so we might as well deal some damage here. Go for the Flamewave Invoker, but our opponent will still be north of that starting life total thanks to all the life gain. Our opponent drawing a card thanks to being the Monarch at the end of the turn. We will certainly buff up the Agatha with the Garenbrig, and some more buffs this turn would be really good. So not managing to double up the plus counters on Agatha. Of course we see more lands off the Sylvan Library. Or 1 more land, we've still got a couple of draws to make here. But yeah, it could be that if we manage to keep the Monarchy, then this would have 4 plus counters on it, making it a 5-5 and much more relevant. Wow, alright, Jesus. Right, let's go for the Yavimaya so that we don't have to take life to the Ancient Tomb. Do have a means of shuffling with the 3 visits at least, but yeah, can't really be blamed for losing this one, I don't think. So shuffle everything around and go for another mana. I'll just shock down a Stomping Ground, because if we lose by 2 life I'm not really going to worry about it, seeing as how this game's gone pretty poorly for us, and we want as much red mana in play as possible for eventually maybe doing something with this. The Flamewave Invoker will now cost 5 mana, so yeah, during the next turn cycle I'll see how many times we can activate that. It's a set 5 damage, it doesn't matter how much we buff this thing. We'll get another couple of plus counters on the Agatha at the beginning of our next turn, so we're slowly getting somewhere, but we have been pretty unlucky this game. I suppose we could make infinite mana with the Nykthos and the Sylvanus' Invoker, make infinite green mana with that, and then use that to untap the Gruul Turf an infinite number of times, which makes infinite red mana into this. Yeah, we'll see what our opponent does here. That's going to be way too time consuming on Magic Online, but might be something that we have to do here if our opponent has us. I'd rather make it a much more functional combo and more easily show my opponent what I'm trying to do. Alright, a Harmonise, drawing 3 cards straight off the top. A food token being cracked, as one will be every turn by the looks of it. A plus counter on the guest again. Untapping the prize pig, our opponent goes up to 45 life. Noteworthy that he does have a black mana in the form of a swamp now. Then an Essence Warden to gain even more life. Constantly gaining pings from the Innkeeper as well. 6 cards in hand at the moment. Then creating a food token with the Pippin, which triggers the Merry and makes a soldier token. That will trigger the Soul Sisters and gain our opponent 2 life. And that will be enough to untap the prize pig, so seeing a hell of a lot of synergies here. Alright, so it looks like Frodo is just swinging in on his own again. Our opponent not too worried about going for the overrun effect with the Pippin, thankfully for us. I think he could have been a lot more aggressive this game. Going to loot with the ring, and that will be fully powered up at this point. Our opponent discarding a Plains and is up to 7 cards in hand. Then when our opponent hits us, the Rapacious Guest is going to trigger again for a food token. The ring will have us lose 3 life, because that is now fully leveled up over the course of the game of Frodo whacking us. Alright, so with our opponent's Monarch trigger on the stack, let's see if we can do something here. Nykthos taps for 7 mana. If we go to untap the Nykthos, it will cost us 5. So we put 5 mana into this, it takes us down to 2, and then we need to use 2 of that mana to untap the Nykthos, so yeah, we don't quite have infinite, do we? So let's not bother with that until next turn. Or what we can do is go for the Invoker though, can't we? Forgot about that. So that is going to cost us 5 mana. We'll do this a few times. That is the first one. And the second time. And a third. Finally getting our opponent south of his starting life total. Knocks him down to 33. So I'm hoping we'll be able to get our opponent here. Has 8 cards in hand. Has to discard to hand size. Discarding another basic. The Court of Garenbrig going to buff the Agatha by 2 again. Which should make combos much easier now. That is now a 5-5. And we'll try our luck again. With this Silver Library, you'll never guess what we're drawing into, though. We know we can buff our commander, because we saw it in the previous game. We did draw into the land that can buff our commander, so maybe should have kept that previously. But I was just looking to get into a more permanent, non-mana intensive solution. But yeah, ultimately that would have been the way to go, I think. Alright, well, there's Arishkar's expertise and some more lands. Let's put the Catacombs back on top. And I don't think we're particularly bothered about drawing cards here. That's not what we want to be spending our mana on. So once again we will shuffle away with the Scalding Tarn. We'll make another red mana in the process. Alright, and now we should be able to make infinite mana with the Sylvanus' Invoker. So taps for 7 mana, the Nykthos. Put just 3 mana into untapping it. Turns it into a creature and untaps it. Then we've got 4 mana floating, so we can tap it down for a bunch of green mana again. That gives us 10, and we just rinse and repeat here, really. We needed to be able to have some surplus mana available after not only putting into the ability of this, but into the ability of the Nykthos as well. So now with this only costing 3 and this costing 2, it's 5 mana we're making with Nykthos, meaning that we net 2 mana every time we do this, which obviously equates to infinite mana. Now, like I said, it is green mana, so we'll just make a surplus of green mana, and then we can use the Invoker's ability to untap the Gruul Turf a bunch of times, and that will be a lot of red mana that we can then put into this. Pretty clunky, but it works. So then we'll tap down the Gruul Turf, then use the Invoker to untap that, and we'll obviously gain a green mana every time we do this as well. This is not infinite though, because we'll need this to only cost 1 mana in order to make infinite with the Gruul Turf. Literally just doing this to generate some red mana to put into this, and hopefully we can show our opponent what we're doing here. So now activating this will cost us 3 mana as well. So we'll do this a few times, and like I said, show my opponent what we're doing here. He may well just scoop to the example of the infinite combo here. That is the second time. And the third time we're doing this, and we still have 10 mana floating, so we can carry on with the Nykthos and Gruul Turf things. So got them down to 18. Our opponent seems to want us to carry on. Alright, so I think we don't really need to go for the infinite mana anymore. I think we've got enough just red mana floating here with the dorks and everything. So let's just go for this 4 more times with the Invoker. And there, we've still got a surplus of mana held up, like I said, and the penultimate activation here is the last one. And it's good game to our opponent, so a pretty clunky game here. But we eventually got there. This seems to be the way with Agatha. You either get all the enablers and none of the buffs, or you get all the buffs and none of the enablers, but this was a fun one to end it on nonetheless. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.